Let's bring in Iyobosa Uwageren, editor of Nation's Capital, the Day newspaper. Excuse me for butchering your name that way this morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Iyobosa Uwageren, that's the Nation's editor this day newspapers, and well, we've been on a couple of assignments together. Remember when we were in Makudi for the CIMIC? It was a lovely time, wasn't it?
Oh, look at that. It's a small world.
Yeah, quite a while that we've not seen. But then let's start with your paper, This Day newspaper. And that screaming headline: First Bank admits a defeat in Mariva case, seeks appeal without due process. GHL, that's General Hydrocarbons Limited, sees desperation. And the story goes, First Bank of Nigeria has finally admitted defeat in the Mariva case between it and General Hydrocarbons Limited, GHL, and begun seeking appeal in a desperate attempt to overturn the ruling by Honorable Justice Dende Dikpeolu of the Federal High Court, Lagos. In a statement yesterday, First Bank acknowledged recent media reports suggesting that some banks had begun complying with the ruling of Justice Dikpeolu's order, which lifted the Mariva order placed on GHL, its directors and shareholders. However, it said such action was premature as the necessary steps for banks and stakeholders to comply with the court's decision had not yet been completed. Iyobosa, what do you make of First Bank's unique interpretation of a judgment by a competent court of law?
Well, I think that is the update in the legal battle between the hydrocarbon and the First Bank over a commercial transaction. You will recall some few weeks back when the First Bank, through what many legal experts describe as a dubious process, went to court to obtain the court injunction, banning the hydrocarbon from accessing his own account, without necessarily declaring that there was a previous Federal High Court injunction, stopping them from doing that. In other words, the First Bank who went to court never disclosed that there was already a court injunction. So about a week ago, the Federal High Court lifted that injunction, describing the process the First Bank went through as very dubious, and also cautioned the lawyer who was involved in that seemingly dubious legal process. Well, it is good that the First Bank is appealing that matter. In a society where you have the rule of law, the court has a way of looking at those issues. So obviously, the First Bank is satisfied with the outcome of the Federal High Court, and they've appealed. In a legal process, I think that is the next step. You go to Court of Appeal to see whether you have a case to vacate what the Federal High Court said in favor of hydrocarbon. So it's a legal process. So we're not lawyers. So let's wait for the lawyers to dig it out.
Charles, can we take this story that's on the top of This Day? I find it very interesting and extremely timely. Trade war, Canada, Mexico, China set to retaliate Trump's sweeping tariffs. Retaliate? Is this possible, Iyobosa? I mean, what are the options here?
Well, I think the whole world is gradually responding to Donald Trump's policy.
Right.
Of course,
they are not threats anymore.
Yes, of course, we are not disappointed because during his campaign, he made those promises and he vowed that he was going to implement that. So now that the president is doing that. But there are huge implications about what Donald Trump is doing.
Yes.
Interestingly, other countries like Mexico, Canada, China, they are responding. They are also retaliating.
Yes.
So, and at the end of the day, there will be a global, seemingly global economic war, and it's going to affect not even the US or the Canada or the Mexico. It's going to affect everybody. There will be huge consequences about the energy price. There will be political tensions across the globe, and at the end of the day, it will also affect so many economic dynamics. And I hope that as we move on, Donald Trump will suddenly realize that he has no monopolies of these sweeping policies that he's implementing. Countries like China, Mexico, and Canada are retaliating, and they will also even these people are already feeling it. They are saying that by the time the Mexico, Canada, and China started retaliating, it will affect the ordinary workers in the United States of America. So let's see whether Donald Trump policies will somersault or have a rethink about what he's currently doing.
All right, that takes us to the Vanguard newspapers that has another perspective on this issue. And in Vanguard, the headline that reads, Nigeria, Africa under pressure as Trump slams tariff on Canada, Mexico, China. And, you know, the intro into that story reads, Nigeria and Africa are now facing the reality of imminent shocks to their external sector as President Donald Trump of the United States makes good his threats of tough tariff to various economies around the world. Now, this comes with retaliatory measures from the affected countries, sparking of a global trade war and so on and so forth. So it's a case of, you know, 2 or 3 big elephants fighting, and the grass now suffers. So Africa, Nigeria are caught right in between this, you know, the trade war among the biggest economies in the world. So what would be the implication of this for Africa and Nigeria?
Well, we've just talked about the global consequences of what Donald Trump is doing. Well, Africa is also a very huge, big market for the global economy. But I doubt whether any African countries, you know, has the capacity to retaliate. You know, they are watching the whole scenario, and they are very, very conscious about the whole thing. Well, let's see how it unfolds. But I doubt whether African countries who rely so much on the rest of the world for intervention, for economy, for trade, and I doubt whether they have the capacity to retaliate. But let's see how it goes.
Yeah, but you know, they say behind every dark cloud is a silver lining. So one would think that probably there might just be some way Africa would be the eventual beneficiary of the trade war among the nations. Is there any such possibility of that happening? Africa benefiting in some way from, you know, what's happening between America and the other major economies?
Well, like you already know, Nigeria is also a very big player in the energy sector. I'm talking of the oil sector. I'm sure with the whole thing, it will push the oil price up. And being that Nigeria is also a huge player in the market, I'm sure Nigeria might benefit from that angle. But apart from that, I don't see any other advantage or advantages that Nigerian or Africa would draw from the whole scenario. Let's watch and see.
All right then.
All right. Well, moving on to the Daily Trust. FG plans fresh electricity tariff hike. Can you tell that I have been waiting for this headline?
I've been looking at it as well, Yolanda.
You know, I don't know what to think of this. Nigeria is already weak at the knees in terms of where we are with the economy. And so to have a new look on fresh electricity tariff hikes, you know, recently, in the recent weeks, we've had no electricity in most parts of the city. And I'm just wondering now that everything has been restored and we're now being hit with this fresh new headline. Charles, what do you think about this?
The story goes, the federal government says plans are ongoing to increase electricity tariffs over the next few months. It, however, said the planned increase needed, to be balanced by subsidies for less affluent electricity users. Now,
what does that mean?
Exactly. I mean, Yobosa, what would that mean then?
You know, the same reasons that every sector is giving for increasing the cost of their services. Of course, recently you also witnessed the NCC, the telecommunication, saying that increasing their tariff with about 50%.
Yes.
And of course, the energy sector is also doing business within the terrain. They're also facing so many economic pressure. The cost of doing business is very high. Of course, you know that in the energy sector, most of the things they rely on to, you know, power their stations, you know, to increase their facilities, are all imported. And where you need to import something, you also need to have access to forests, and that is a major problem in Nigeria today. So Apart from that, I think the whole thing is that there has been this controversy around energy in Nigeria. I'm talking about power, you know, where their services are very poor.
Very, very poor indeed.
People, as we speak now, they are not getting value for the money they are paying.
Right.
They are not getting money for the services that the power sector is rendering. So it would be a very unpopular decision for the federal government to think about increasing the tariff for now, because it's going to be a very unpopular decision. I'm sure most Nigerians, labor will resist that. Because if you want to increase your tariff, you need to increase your services first, so that when Nigerians are paying, they will have every reasons or justification for paying for that higher price.
Yes.
Otherwise, it will be decision will be very unpopular.
You know, sometimes a government comes out with this explanation that, you know, those are the pains that we need to go through or we need to pay for in order to get improved service delivery. For instance, the telecoms sectors are saying that, you know, the cost of goods and services has actually increased across the country. So in their own case, they need to be able to meet up with their financial obligations, and that's why, you know, the ordinary Nigerian has to pay for the services they render. But in the case of the power sector, over the years, I mean, so many policies left, right, and center, and then we are not having steady power supply.
Yes.
So is there any possibility that, I mean, when they increase the tariffs, we would have improved services in terms of power supply?
I think the major problem with the power sector is corruption. I mean, from all data available, over the years, we've spent billions of dollars all in an attempt to, you know, increase the facilities so that they can generate or they can, you know, render a quality service to Nigerians. But what are we saying? You see public funds diverted for public use. As you remember, the immediate past minister of power is facing trial, you know, in the competent court of law in Nigeria for diverting billions of naira to his private use. I mean, the money that was meant to resuscitate Mabila's power stations, such huge amount of money, billions of dollars were diverted. So Nigeria cannot continue to subsidize corruption, you know, that is being perpetrated by the business elite, by the political elite, by the politician, by the civil servant. We cannot continue to subsidize that. I think once the corruptions in the power sector is resolved, some of these things will be tackled, rather than asking Nigeria to pay for more services that they are not getting. You are asking Nigeria to continue to subsidize corruptions in the power sector. So I think that is a major problem that we are facing in Nigeria here. So increasing the tariff for now in the power sector will be very unpopular, and I can assure you that Nigerians and the labor group will resist that move.
Oh, well, I think that also would be something to, you know, keep our fingers crossed for. But I mean, in the midst of that gloomy situation, there is a spark of bright light. And in the Punch, we have that screaming headline: Dangote price slash marketers with imported fuel fear loss. I mean, the price of the pump price of petroleum products, premium motor spirit, that's petrol, has actually come down, or is expected to come down, with Dangote, you know, cutting their own price by about 60 Naira. Yolanda.
Yes, I think we should have even started with this story because it's very positive and it's a big plus for everybody. Unfortunately, we are extremely short on time, and I just wanted to quickly run through one or two of the international news headlines that are making the waves. We have the Daily Telegraph with the EU warns Trump, we will not be bullied. And then in the Times, we have the French tell UK to eat humble pie on Brexit. Unfortunately, we do not have much time and we cannot go into those in depth.
Well, we actually had to make out time to cross over to the Grammy Awards. So
absolutely.
Yeah, that's kudos for Arise News and its crew out there in the United States of America. Arise is also one of the winners as far as I'm concerned.
That's
well,
right.
Thank you very much, Yobosa Iwujiaren, the Nation's editor, the Nation's Capital editor this day. Thanks so much for joining us on today's newspaper review. But that's all we have time for here on Daybreak. I'm Charles Eruka. It's goodbye from me.
And I am Yolanda Robert. Please do keep it here on Arise News. The morning show is next. Goodbye.